which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll begin with roll call. Dr. Fuller.
Mr. Irwin.
Here.
Mrs. Killian. Mrs. Moore.
Present.
Ms. Lauer. Present. Dr. Powers.
Present.
Ms. Scott. Mrs. Wise. Here.
Our vision and mission. Our vision is working together with our community. We inspire our students to discover their talents and rise to their greatest potential. Our mission is building on the strengths of our diverse community to create an engaging, comprehensive educational environment that supports the growth of lifelong learners. We move on to our consent agenda at this time.
Move approval of the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second. We have a motion and a second for our consent agenda. Are there any questions or comments from the board? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. And abstain. Thank you. Next, we will move to our accounts payable docket. Mrs. Donna Wilson.
President Killian, Superintendent Hayworth, members of the Board of School Trustees. The Finance Committee did meet this evening at 4 o'clock prior to this meeting, and I'll give you a brief report from that. But however, note that the full report is in your email also. We pulled several claims, ACM Environmental Inc. for $62,780. This was for air quality testing at 10 of our schools: Lost Creek, Farrington Grove, Rio Grande, Dixie B, and Sugar Grove Elementary, Woodrow Wilson and West Vigo Middle, and West Vigo and North Vigo High Schools. 1/3 of our schools are tested each year, so this is that third of that testing component. IS Corp, Integrated Systems Corporation, $31,935.60. That is hosting of our Skyward student management system for the period October 1, 22 to September 30th of 2023. Dr. Brad Balch, $7,500. He was the outside grant evaluator per grant guidelines for the Lilly Comprehensive Counseling Grant, and that was a year 5 evaluation. Baker Tilly Municipal Advisors, $53,474.13. That was for professional services rendered in connection with financial planning and issuance of bonds, including preparation of the preliminary financing options, meeting attendance, offering documents, bond rating application and the calls, continuing disclosure compliance, our bond sale, and other services. And card services for multiple bills totaling $2,835.86. That is our credit card company, and that was for expenses such as conference attendance and airfare, Career Center Expo registration, vehicle plates and registration. We also discussed where we were relative to fuel. We had talked about diesel and gas prices for the year. As of this date, we have spent $1.3 million for fuel, primarily out of the operating referendum fund, because that's where the bus fuel bills come from. And last year's total was $1,020,436. So I anticipate another bill prior to the end of the year, but right now we're sitting at a $300,000, nearly $300,000 increase. We were also asked about the total bill this year for the district's wellness clinic. To date, we have paid Proactive MD $1,088,767 for an average bill of right around $99,000 per month. We have not paid the last bill. That's 11 bills this month. And we purchased a lot of paper this time on our docket. We had a 2 semi-shipment come in, which amounted to 1,680 cases of paper, 10 reams per case. It comes out to about 8.4 million pieces of paper. We anticipate that'll last the rest of the school year. So with that said, I think that's our report for this evening. Be happy to answer any questions.
having met at 4 o'clock. I appreciate your response to our questions here at 6 o'clock, so thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Wilson. At this time, we have a motion and a second to approve the November accounts payable docket. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. And abstain. Thank you. Next, we have donations. Mrs. Donna Wilson.
I sat down prematurely, I'm sorry. President Killian, Superintendent Hayworth, members of the board. Tonight's board packet includes donations from the Fort Harrison chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution, Hybrid Light, and Donors Choose. The donated funds will be used in support of programs within our schools, at Riley and Franklin Elementary, and at the district level within our CTE department. We respectfully request permission to accept these generous gifts.
Move approval of the grants. I'll second that.
Correct, it's donations.
Move approval of the donations.
I'll second my donations also.
We have a motion and a second to approve the donations. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
With gratitude.
Always. All those that we do have a motion and a second, all those in favor of accepting the donations, signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign, and abstain. Thank you. Next, we'll move to new business. The personnel report and professional leave requests, Mr. Michael Cox.
President Killian, Superintendent Hayworth, members of the Board of Trustees, administration seeks approval of personnel and professional report as presented this evening.
I move to approve the personnel report and professional leave as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the personnel report professional leave request. Are there any questions or comments from the board? All those in favor of approval signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign, and abstain. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we'll move to roofing projects of 2022. Dr. John Newport.
President Killian, Superintendent Hayward, members of the Board of Trustees. As a major data point in our ongoing and living maintenance plan, architect firm Martin Riley provides input, advice, and professional oversight into our long-term roof maintenance plan. Next summer, Otter Creek Middle School and Sarah Scott Middle School are slated for sections of the roof to be replaced. In a partnership with Martin Riley, a bid process was carried out with a legal ad on October 31st that posted the bid specs publicly. In addition to the ad, 6 contractors across the state were emailed by Martin Riley, and on November 9th, a pre-bid meeting took place to allow contractors to ask any questions or obtain clarification. 2 bidders attended the meeting, and on November 26th, the bid opening took place, and 1 potential bidder, Associated Roofing Professionals, submitted a bid. The other bidder that attended the meeting backed out because of large projects that became available within closer to their community. Based upon the solicitation for proposals, review of the bids and completeness, response to specifications and scope of work, we submit to you the recommendation to accept the bid from Associated Roofing Professionals. I'll answer any questions that you may have.
Do we have a motion or a second?
Make a motion to approve the roofing projects 2022 as presented.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to approve the roofing projects 2022 to Associated Roofing Professionals. At this time, are there any public comments? I do not have anything that you had signed up for, but I want to give this moment. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
Is it typical to only have one person, one group submit a bid? I know Martin Riley's done this quite a bit, and they've sent out plenty of feelers for it. Is it normal just to have one respondent?
Possibly for our geographic area, Associated Roofing Professionals is located nearby, and so they're the largest contractor capable of doing the work in our area. And other areas such as Indianapolis and Fort Wayne was one of the other areas that we may have drawn from, but just a little bit too far for them to be able to make it work.
And we've been pleased with the work in the past, because I know that's a very common name that I've seen
Yes.
the whole time on the board.
They-
And I assumed we were pleased with the work, but I wanted to double check.
Martin Riley is also pleased with the work. They're the ones who check their scope throughout with regular field reports. And then also, we have been pleased with their work, both as far as their professionalism throughout the job and attention to details and any needs within around the building, such as cleaning up their job site and stuff like that, to keep the school looking in a nice
You mentioned the comprehensive maintenance plan that we have in place, and could you just provide a little bit more information about that rotation for roofing?
Sure. Martin Riley has been our primary roofing architect for a relationship for 27 years. And throughout those 27 years, they've provided us a rotation of roofs for all of our 24 schools. And with that rotation, we look at about a 5-year plan at a time to plan those projects out 5 years in advance. We just wrapped up the 5th year, and now we've created a 10-year plan for the next 10 years as part of our ongoing maintenance plan to keep our roofs to where they're leak-free.
Thank you.
Are the 3 high schools the only roofs that are not all done at one time?
No, that's, in the case of these 2 middle schools, the whole roof won't be done at one time. The roofs are sectioned out by different parts of the building so that they can kind of be rotated as well in a long-term plan.
Okay, and aren't the high schools a third, or is it half and half?
It's probably not half, but I don't know exactly what it is, but
Okay.
it would be at least.
Less than
at
half.
Yeah, probably less than a third,
Okay,
most of a third.
all right, thank you.
At this time, we do have a motion and a second to approve the roofing projects of 2022 to Associated Roofing Professionals. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign. And abstain. Thank you. Next, we'll move to the year-end transfers of appropriations and resolution to transfer funds to the rainy day fund. Mrs. Donna Wilson.
President Cogan, Superintendent Hayworth, and members of the board, your packets this evening include 2 resolutions that are normally addressed at year-end. The first grants us the ability to transfer appropriations within the education operations, debt service, and referendum funds. It is important to note that each of these funds' overall expenditures will be well within the budgets established by the DLGF for 2022. However, within the funds themselves, we will need to make functional transfers to balance each major expense classification. This is done each year before we actually close the accounting records for a year. In January, we will bring a transfer report detailing the functional transfers made to balance 2022 back to you. The second resolution authorizes us to transfer up to $3.5 million from the operations fund to the rainy day fund. Statute allows schools to move unexpended cash balances to the rainy day fund for future use. Remember that rainy day funds must be appropriated by the board and authorized prior to use. Right now, there are no planned expenditures from the rainy day fund. We respectfully request approval of both these resolutions this evening.
I move approval of the year-end transfers.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and approval, or a motion and a second for approval of the year-end transfers of appropriations and resolution. At this time, are there any public comments? I do not have anything signed up. If you would like to speak, we do ask that you sign up ahead of time, but at this time, is there anyone in the audience? Okay, we will move to questions and comments from the board. Oh. Well, we have, yeah. Any questions or comments?
Is it, how much of this would you say is directly attributed to the ESSER funds, their one-time?
Some, but not as much as when we went into this budget year, we knew, you're talking about the unexpended cash balance?
Yeah, yes.
Quite a bit of that would be attributable to the ESSER funds, because as you know, we take fuel and some of those big ticket items now out of the ESSER grant funds. Those are customarily expenditures that are tied directly to the operations fund. And since that operations fund does have a cash balance at the end of the year, we will ask to transfer it to $3.5 million. It's important to note that the reason why I said up to is because I don't want to take it down farther than the beginning balance. So I want to see how the rest of the year, our bills flow in for the rest of the year, because we still have some substantial bills that we will pay through the end of the year, like property casualty insurance and those types of things. And I don't want to arbitrarily deflate the balance. I want to leave it where it was.
Thank you.
see these cash balance transfers at the end of the year, because when that referendum is up, in order to no longer be in deficit spending, you have to transfer the amount of the referendum fund out at the end of that year. Otherwise, when the referendum goes away, then you're automatically back in deficit spending.
And those rainy day fund balance, the rainy day fund balance could assist with those expenditures.
Right, right, but still the goal, at least in my view, I won't be here then, but the goal in my view would be you have those cuts made where your budget would be balanced at the end of the referendum. But it is nice to have built up some rainy day
Safety
funds over the years as a safety net to maybe buy in another year or two to get to operating and positively.
Thank you, Mrs. Wilson. At this time, we do have a motion and a second to approve the year-end transfers of appropriations and resolutions to transfer funds to the rainy day fund. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign, and abstain. Thank you. Next, we'll move to grants. Dr. Karen Golden.
Good evening, President Killian, Superintendent Hayward, and members of the board. This evening, we bring you for final approval the Indiana Learns Champion Plus Matching Funds Grant Program. As we discussed at our last board meeting, this is a program that is coming to us from the Indiana Department of Education. The Indiana Department of Education will use their ESSER dollars to put forth this program, and they are allowing districts to match $250 of that for our students to participate. If they do participate, they will receive the $1,000 full total for the tutoring program. As we discussed before, students must meet several criteria, some of which student qualifies for federal free or reduced lunch, and then also the student has to have scored below proficiency in both language arts and math on the most recent iLearn. So the tutoring program will focus on students from last year that did not pass language arts and math in 3rd and 4th grade, so they would be this year's 4th and 5th graders that would qualify. The program, as you know, is administered by the Mind Trust of Indianapolis. It goes directly through them, and we would simply provide through our ESSER dollars that $250 match. Our curriculum team researched this at great length. We talked to folks in other districts to see what they were doing, districts our size, and the vast majority of those are matching the $250. So that is the recommendation that we bring to you this evening.
I'll make a motion to approve the grants that were presented.
We do have a motion and a second to approve the grants. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
Mrs. Killian, I do have one other grant.
I'm
If I
sorry.
can mention the Title II. Yes, that's okay. I wasn't moving fast enough, Mrs. Wise. So on the Title II grant, that is the second one, and this is the grant that we're very, very much appreciative of, that comes from the Indiana Department of Education. This is our professional development resource that we use for many of our digital learning trainings. We also provide funds out of this grant for our class size reduction program. These are teachers that are 0.5 salaried positions at Dixie B, Fayette, Rio Grande, Riley, Lost Creek, and Hoosier Prairie. These teachers provide a second person in the classroom in 1st grade so that our children have a much better chance to learn to read with more staff available. We're very proud and pleased with that program. The benefits have been enormous. We had a VCTA discussion about this grant, and those are the comments that come forth, that they very much value this 1st grade program. In addition, we have writing co-teachers that are paid from this grant. We have 5 teachers that serve every boy and girl in the 2nd and 5th grade. So all of our students are served with this program, and they receive instruction in writing conventions and writing process. We have a pre-test, we have a post-test, and it provides very, very helpful data to our teachers on how students are learning to read and write so that they can make adjustments in the classroom as they continue throughout the week when the writing teacher is not there. So again, we appreciate the structured lesson that takes place as part of Title II. So we respectfully request your approval for Title II as well as the other grant this evening.
I'll make a motion to accept both grants.
We have a motion from Mrs. Wise and a second from Ms. Scott to accept both grants presented this evening. Do we have any questions or comments from the board?
I would like to congratulate Dr. Bowler and your team, as usual, that you do an excellent job at taking full advantage of federal flow through and state dollars to the benefit of our students and our teachers, so thank you.
Thank you, a nice group, thank you.
We do have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, and abstain. Thank you. We are now moving on to our comments and correspondence information. At this time, we do have several comments. They will be timed at 3 minutes, and I would just like to remind you that to not use personal names or information as you're presenting, and to keep your presentation directed to the board, please. Mrs. Laura, are you fine with 3 minutes?
3 minutes, and I will provide a 30-second notice. So I'll just say 30 seconds to give you a heads up.
And if I mispronounce your name, I apologize ahead of time. But first up, we have Susan Edmondson speaking on bullying.
First, I want to take a second to just thank a couple of the outgoing board members, Jody Wise and Rosemary Scott, for being brave enough to ask lots of questions and to vote what you thought the public wanted. About bullying, I have a friend whose white autistic child was bullied in one of our high schools to the point of extreme emotional distress. Her parent worked with the school corporation and the school, and it was decided by those entities that the best option would be for the child to graduate early, as opposed to working with the situation of bullying and dealing with the bullies. The child did just that and has graduated and will not be back in the school. She's losing most of her senior year because of the bullying, and that was apparently okay with Vigo County Schools for the victim to leave as opposed to the bullies being dealt with. We have to fight bullying in our schools. We're losing our children to other schools, we're losing our children to suicide, we're losing them to emotional distress, and it's not acceptable. So I hope in the next few months you guys will work with whoever you have to work with to increase whatever training you're already doing about bullying, because obviously it's not doing the job.
Thank you.
Next, I have, is it Grace Clay? About the investigation.
As you know, there has been a lot of recent media about anti-Black racist harassment of students at West Terre Haute High School. I've talked with a number of the parents of the students that were impacted to hear their experiences and their stories of what their children are enduring at the school. I also read, the statements from the superintendent and about the investigation, and it was said that there was an outside agency brought in. That doesn't feel altogether honest. The outside agency is Bose Law. It's a law firm in Indianapolis, and the Vigo County School District, the school corporation, is its client in another lawsuit brought by the ACLU. So it's hard to believe that in good faith you ask this law firm to come in and investigate these claims to have the student's best interest at heart. It seems and I think it's a pretty logical conclusion, that they were there to assess the legal risk of the school corporation. So I'm here to say that's unacceptable. That is not in the best interest of these students. They need, first of all, they need a full evaluation of what's happened that's not just looking at potential lawsuits against the school corporation. They need an outside agency that truly is going to advocate for them and not for the school district, to protect the school district from potential lawsuits. The claims that we're hearing and the reports that were made by these students and how they were ignored implicates faculty. And we're all here, a lot of us are here to ask you to hold them accountable. Because if students were going to those faculty and saying those things that we all read, and that was ignored, I'm sorry, those people need to be gone. They have no business running a school in which students of color are experiencing this, and it's going ignored to the point where they're transferring out to another school, and only a year after being out of that school, do they finally feel enough dignity to actually confront what they have experienced?
30 seconds.
That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Heather Hendel, speaking on equality.
Hello, my name's Heather Hindle, and I'm a native of Terre Haute. My first home was Jonesy's Trailer Park, and my grandma lived on Cleveland Avenue. And I went to Vigo schools for most of my education. And what I have come to realize as an adult who has tried to be a lifelong learner is that we live in, and have always lived as Americans, in a white supremacist society. It's been built on white supremacy. And we've had less history since slavery than we had while we had slavery. And after that, we had segregation. And that doesn't go away in a few decades. We have to actively dismantle those ideas individually and as an institution. Like, this isn't something where, oh, I didn't mean to do it. No, you won't know that you're doing it because you've been raised in a white supremacist society. You have to actively educate yourself and make sure that everybody who's working with children is educated so that they're not inadvertently doing these kind of things or explicitly doing these things. We need to take better care of this. It goes for race, it goes for class, it goes for gender identity, sexual orientation, ableism, all of those things, and probably things I'm not thinking of. But it is an obligation. Those students deserve the education that the white, cisgendered, heterosexual Christian students are getting. They deserve that. They have a right to that. And it can't be a passive thing. You have to actively pursue that education and make sure that everyone is informed and held accountable. It's absolutely vital. And I appreciate your attention and time.
Thank you.
Next we have, is it Mustafa Ashuri? Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes,
Speaking
correct.
on race relations.
Good evening, board. Topic is the current race relations going on. I know it's a touchy issue, but it's something that needs to be addressed. You know, I'm from Vigo County, and I attended, Vigo County schools. I was an athlete here, and the guys I played with, situation that has allegedly happened, and what I'm seeing in the newspaper, we didn't have anything going on like that. And that was in the 80s. You know, this is 2022, and I'm surprised situations like this is still happening. You know, what are you going to do with, you know, with the current racial harassment and bullying? We know what bullying does. You know, it alienates a kid. You know, just like the lady said here a little while ago. You know, suicide is always a major concern. I think Ms. Folks is involved with that as far as the health issues that these kids might be going through, these current kids. You know what I mean? You know, I know they're experiencing trauma. I know their grades have suffered, you know, and I hope they stay in school. I hope they don't just drop out. And, you know, and there's the streets. Then there's the penal system, you know. All we do is talk about funds, federal funds, but, you know, what happened to the zero tolerance policy? Is that on the ticket? The family needs answers. Like I said, this is 2022. It's not 1964. This type of thing that's going on should not be happening. I saw the video, and I tell you what, I got sick.
Next, we have Angela Tanner on racism and diversity.
Earlier this year, I called out this very white board for the lack of diversity in key positions, like administrative roles in our schools and head coaches. That should have been heeded as a warning, but it was ignored. You may make grand statements about strongly condemning racial harassment and discrimination going on in our schools, but your actions speak much louder than words. Using your lawyers to run the independent investigation into these events shows us how little you want to deal with hate firsthand. And it proves your only interest lies in preventing a lawsuit rather than putting what these students have gone through front and center and giving them the justice they deserve. It's time to step up and start doing the right thing. Expulsion of all the students involved is the only action that will set the example to start enacting change. The firing of the head football coach, the deans, and the principal of that school are needed immediately. They were complicit to what was happening and hoped it would be brushed under the rug like previous incidents at that school. I would also highly recommend you move your director of diversity into an office into that school and start pushing diversity training to all faculty so it can be better woven into curriculum. If you choose to sit silently by and keep pushing responsibilities off onto outside sources instead of stepping up and leading the charge, you have failed at your job, you have failed these students, you have failed your fiduciary responsibilities to this county, and you failed at being a decent human being. And since I know Dr. Hayworth, you like quotes so much, I will give you one from Angela Davis. In a racist society, it is not enough to be a non-racist. We must be anti-racist.
Next, I have Jordan, is it Trachtenberg? About West Vigo racism.
I'd like to reiterate that I find it concerning that the law firm investigating West Vigo High School, Bose Law, is the same firm that represented North High School in a discrimination case against 2 transgender students who requested to use the boys' bathroom in accordance with their gender identity. This school corporation and West Vigo High School are compelled historically to cover up the history of racism and other discrimination at the school and more broadly in Vigo County schools. And the principal, administration, and coaches are all complicit in their silence against these anti-Black hate crimes that have come to light this week. And we are watching all of you and what you do in response to this, because it's not just about writing a report and hiding it under the rug and then continuing to do nothing. These students are severely harmed by this inaction of the school corporation, and especially considering that a lot of the same people who are involved in covering up these crimes are involved with school athletics, the school board, high positions of political power, and other executive positions. We know why they are siding with the administration of West Vigo High. That's all.
Next, we have Matt Larimer from Speaking Upon West Vigo.
Everything I've wanted to say has already been said.
I have Terry Clark, speaking on recent incidents. I'm sorry, Reverend Terry Clark, I'm sorry.
President, to superintendent, and to board, simply as representative of a number of people in the community who are basically angry, upset, and disgusted over the behavior that caused this young man to have to transfer from West Vigo High School. The reason many of us are disgusted is because if this kind of behavior is emboldened in high school, it filters down to middle school, it filters down to elementary schools. And basically, children believe that they can get away with it at those lower levels, particularly after they leave high school. They'll think they can do it anywhere. This is a very serious situation, and the reason it's serious to people like myself is not just because of what happened to that young man that some people call racial harassment. It's plain out and out racial bullying. Racist bullying is basically all it is. I thought that at my age, that this kind of nonsense, this kind of racist behavior would have ended with my generation, but it didn't end with my generation. I have grown children. It has existed through their generation. We have grandchildren in the school corporation, and it's still evident now. I'm afraid there are babies who aren't even in school yet who have to deal with the same kind of nonsense. So we're calling on you as a school corporation to put something with some teeth in it that says this type of behavior will not be tolerated. Anybody complicit in it is gone. Anybody who perpetrates it is gone. And so that's basically what this community is calling on this school board to do. It's one thing for that to happen, but these people who embolden this kind of behavior don't even want these type of subjects taught in our schools, which is also kind of ridiculous from my standpoint. But it's really up to the school corporation to do something about it, and that's what we're not only just wanting, that's basically what we're demanding, that the board do something about making this intolerable situation, right, at least less intolerable than it is, because basically change has got to come.
That's right.
Thank you.
Next, we have Peggy Joyner on racial harassment.
Good evening. I would like to agree with what most everyone here said. I went through your policies, and I was looking specifically for a policy on hate speech.
and I couldn't find it. So I see that we're calling it racial harassment. And as I look at a board full of faces that look nothing like me, I don't know who wrote these policies, but I can assure you the last thing I feel is harassed when I'm called the N-word. I feel hate. I feel hated. And when you take a belt out and pretend to whoop a young man like a slave, that's a hate crime. So I'm gonna need y'all to change those policies so that they're called what they really, really are. Hold on, I'm sorry. Because, I grew up here, with Rio Grande, was one of like 3 black kids, was called the N-word one time. Principal, I know we're not supposed to mention names, his name was Dr. Jacobson. I never got called the N-word ever again because he meant it. He meant it. Don't you dare attack the student the way that you have attacked her. And I've never, ever, ever been called the N-word throughout Otter Creek, Wilson, and North. Never. Because I have people around me who enforce the rules. And that's not happening in West Terre Haute. And I still have nieces and nephews that go to that school. And if you do not want us or them to meet these slurs with violence, then you need to fix it. Because then you're gonna put them in the system, and it's gonna play into the school to prison pipeline. And we got kids to raise. They're gonna be somebody. They're not gonna be your inmates. They're not gonna be institutionalized. So we need you to take care of them. I'm gonna do my part, I just need you to do yours.
That's right.
And I wrote an email not too long ago telling on the principal of my son's school.
30 seconds.
I've apologized to her face, but now I want to apologize to her in front of all of you because I get it. I get why she's so strict on bullying. And Miss Scotia Brown, I'm sorry.
Next I have Pam, I'm sorry, is it Cat?
It's Kat.
Cat, I'm sorry. Speaking about West Vigo.
Good evening. I think that you probably all already know this, but I'm just going to say it for everybody here. Racism costs this country $16 trillion every single year. $16 trillion. I don't know what it's cost you, cost this corporation, or what it will cost it moving forward. But the solution is simple. Like Peggy said, you don't allow it to start, you don't allow it to fester, and you get rid of the people who do it. Second thing that I researched before coming here, and I found with a lot of school corporations like this that have had the trouble that you guys have had with West Vigo, is the expulsion rate and the suspension rate among white children versus black children are way different. I have no idea what it is here, but I know what it is nationally when I looked it up. It would be interesting to see what the suspension rate is of white kids versus black kids in Vigo County School Corporation. That would be interesting to know. The other thing that would be interesting to know is there a standard or policy here when kids violate the policy? What happens? Because from what I'm seeing I have over 100 messages on my phone. From what I've been told and what I'm seeing, it is all over the board. Whether you get suspended, you don't get suspended, teacher gives you a break, teacher doesn't give you a break. That has to stop. If you have a policy about suspension, it needs to be followed through. And they need to know, the teachers need to know, the coaches need to know, the staff needs to know that it's that way for everybody. It's not that way for somebody. It's not that way for some of the kids and not other kids. It's that way for all the kids. And that is what I hear and what I see. I have a message from a mother on my phone, and her child was 6 years old. They were lining up to go to lunch, and the kid that was next to her child, said he couldn't stand next to him. And the little boy's 6 years old. Well, why? And the answer the kid gave him is because your tan skin makes me itch. Now, that's 6 years old. There's a systemic problem in Vigo County School Corporation with race. There's a systemic problem that you all need to address in every single school if this happens to a 6-year-old. Thank you.
Thank you all for speaking this evening. That concludes our call for citizen comments at the time. We are moving on to information from Superintendent Hayward.
Yeah, thank you for being here tonight. It takes great courage to stand in front of the school board, call them out on where there are definitely areas that need to be addressed and have to be addressed and must be addressed. I think our actions will speak louder than our words here in the next couple of weeks, and I hope that you will pay attention to those actions as they come out. Thank you.
Next, we'll move to information from the board members, and at this time, we have a special presentation from board member Jackie Lauer.
Down, but we have just a token of appreciation from the rest of the board and Dr. Hayworth and administrative staff, because for 4 years we've worked together and we've met for coffees and subways and before meetings or after meetings, you and I have. And just want to thank you. We want to thank you for your passion to the community, dedication to the school board and the entire staff of Vigo County School Corporation, but mostly to your heart and your passion for kids and the community. So, thank you so much. I'm going to make my rounds. Unfortunately, we have 4 that are leaving us.
You all made the person who was supposed to have a brush. I turned that off. Dr. Powers, Susan, you have been so insightful and so generous with your comments, connecting the K-12 and the Vigo County School Corporation with ISU, and your comments have been they've just been right on task with a lot of our decisions and a lot of our discussions, and so appreciate your being part of us, and I hate to see you leave, I hate to see you leave, so thank you again, and again, a token of our appreciation from everybody. And stay in touch, you're close. You're here, you're here. And Jody, who has had double duty this past term, my goodness, how you had, we always say there's so much on our plates, but you had 2 plates that you were balancing and trying to keep up with. And I know you met with Tom almost daily or hourly, he said, and helped us just try to drive through that incredible chaos of COVID. And I want to thank you for the whole community for your leadership in that.
been a great, in so many leadership responsibilities, and your questions and comments that are always forthcoming, we have appreciated very much. So, stay in touch,
Absolutely.
and thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
I don't think the words thank you would ever be enough to know what that means, but thank you to our board members that are leaving us, but we hope you stay in touch. At this time, our future meeting will be Monday, January 9th, here in the administration building.